Ako, tinatanong ko lagi yan eh. No? Are the models of progress and development that we propose to people, no? Are they the models that are really appropriate for them, or that the models that they desire? Science and religion must work together. They need each other. And the various religions should also work together, share their insights with one another. You know, the Office of Theological Concerns of the Federation of Asian Bishops' Conferences issued a study on caring for the environment. But it included a whole section on what the other Asian religions say about caring for the earth. What Hinduism, Buddhism, Confucianism, Islam, no? And we discovered there's a lot that we can that we hold in common, which could be a starting point for our common action too. So yun. And the final section is about ecological education and spirituality. Guidelines for Christian, now it's more for the Christians, Christian spiritual ecological conversion. And here, the Holy Father breaks protocol. No? He enumerates little actions that could be done and should be done. In fact, some people were surprised. They said that this last portion doesn't sound like a regular papal encyclical. No. Because he went to details like watch your water consumption, turn off the light if you don't need it, if you're not using it. No, check your lifestyle. No, how about the attitude of gratitude? Is it still alive? Do people still give thanks? It says, go back to praying grace before meals, and go back to saying grace after meals. It says, sobriety, generosity, happiness in simplicity, daily gestures that will break the cycle of violence, exploitation, selfishness. Then, he says, do you still find time to rest? Last Wednesday, yesterday, I'm operating on different time zones, so I'm confused. What day is today? Sabi ko sa inyo, Thursday. So yesterday, no, the Holy Father mentioned that in his audience, no, Wednesday audience. He said, yeah, don't become a slave of work. Work has become a god, and we sacrifice everyone, including ourselves. We sacrificed our family. We've sacrificed friendship. And we offer all of them as burnt offering to the God called work. Kaya pati yung mga laborers natin, sunog-sunog na. That's why the Sunday worship, the Sunday rest, is good for the environment and is good for the human ecology. So he ends with that, worship. For on the seventh day, God, the Creator, rested. Ay, nako. Oh, please read the Encyclical. May I be given one more minute just to indicate a few things, which some commentators have said and have the experts have also noticed in the Encyclical. Very briefly, Leonardo Boff, this one of the main exponents of the theology of liberation, said, reading the Encyclical, he noticed a very Latin American approach to the realities, the methodology employed by the Holy Father. See, judge, act, and celebrate. Well, that is not purely Latin American. Since Vatican II, it has become some sort of a methodology. But I am very happy when he added that, because even in Asian circles, we always say, see, judge, act. But the Pope would always add, in the end, celebrate. Celebrate. For that will remind us that the horizon is that of gift rather than function only. Gift. When you look at people, do you see a gift or do you see someone that could be used? When you see an object, do you see a gift or do you see something that could be manipulated? No. Celebrate. So after this forum, there will be celebration. Then there is this scholar from Naples, Alex Sanotelli. He, reading this, he said, yes, the challenges of the Holy Father are real. And he affirms that the most original for him in the Encyclical is uniting the cry of the poor with the cry of the earth. Integral ecology, a total listening. And he says the church is a privileged community to be able to do this, to respond to this. But that will require for us in the church a meeting of faith and life. The faith professed and the living of that faith. We say, I believe in God, the Creator. I say it, I profess it. But my life, my lifestyle might betray that I don't really believe in God, the Creator. Maybe I believe in myself as God, the Creator. So he says, yeah, the challenge of this encyclical to the church is review the faith that we profess. And how far are we from living it? He even mentions Thomas Berry. He says, Thomas Berry once noted that we have already formulated a moral response to suicide, homicide, genocide. Now we need to formulate a moral response to biocide and geocide, killing the earth, killing life. Bagong project ng Manila Observatory and siguro Loyola School of Theology, mga side. And then we have Gaël Giraud, a Jesuit, a French Jesuit. He's very happy that the Holy Father addresses this encyclical to all peoples. After all, the earth is our common home. And he says there is a growing awareness in Europe regarding the role of religion and religious traditions in participating in public discussions, sharing their unique wisdoms. And he says that maybe through this dialogue between politics and religion, the politicians could acquire greater courage in regulating concerns and markets for the common good. So let us draw resources from the faith and let us share that. Now there are two sociologists based in Milan, and what they stressed in the encyclical is the new humanism that the Holy Father is presenting to us. It's not new in the sense that it has been concocted recently by Pope Francis. It is rooted in the biblical tradition, but it is being proposed anew, a rediscovery of the person as relational. And he says, and both of them said, if the person is relational, then human freedom must always be relational. Freedom must be exercised in responsibility for the others. Freedom cannot be invoked as an excuse for separating myself from others and even harming others, just because I am free. If I am a person in relationships, then even my freedom and my choices must consider the impact or the consequences on others. Chiara Giaccardi even quotes Hannah Arendt. Hannah Arendt said that there are in our times, two symbolic killings. The killing of God the Father and the killing of Mother Earth. So she asks the question, if you do not have God as Father and you do not have the earth as Mother, then ano ka? You are not anymore a child of someone. You are just you. You are not connected with anyone anymore. So Hannah Arendt asked the question, what happens to gratitude? What happens to respect? What happens to sisterhood and brotherhood? What happens to tenderness when you do not have a father, when you do not have a mother? Caring. The Holy Father loves to talk about tenderness. Do not be afraid to care tenderly. And for him, caring is not being a spy, doing some surveillance work. No, it is an attentive look at the other because I am concerned. It is a nurturing look so that I promote what is good and beautiful in the other. And it is that look that regenerates the other. And I must take care of myself too. Not to dominate others, not to rebel, not to destroy, but to take care and to help others bloom. And finally, another Jesuit, Giacomo Costa, who is the editor of Aggiornamenti Sociali, says, for us Christians and educators, let us pay attention to the little actions, the gestures that the Holy Father proposes. Remember in Evangelii Gaudium, the Holy Father already said, reality is greater than ideas. So here he said, you're always talking about ideas. Go to reality, do something. Say grace before meals. Say thank you. Those are the things that will make that will make a dent. Not your beautiful ideas only. It doesn't mean we don't need ideas. But without the gestures, nothing will change, he says. And then conversion. And he calls for patience. The Holy Father calls for patience. Just like any conversion, if we need time. And the Holy Father believes in that. Time is greater than space. So patience. Move through time. But every time, at every moment in time, do some little acts, some gestures for that. And rest. Chito, find time to rest. I should say this to myself. For resting, yun namang iba, rest naman ng rest. Please do not use this as an excuse. Ganyan. Yung tawa kasi nung iba parang nakakaloko eh. Nababasa ko na eh. But resting here is not just for mental and physical recuperation. For we are part of a delicate world. We are also delicate. But it is also a spiritual act. When you rest, you let go, and you really say, the world is in the hands of someone mightier than I am. I may disappear now, and I'm sure the world will continue, thanks to the providential God. I started by referring to Saint Francis of Assisi, whose name Pope Francis took. But at the end of the encyclical, I told myself, after reading it, oh, come on, Pope Francis, you cannot hide it. You are the son of Ignatius. You are the son of Ignatius. I could see strains of the first principle and foundation, the purpose of creation, to glorify God. And the whole of creation is given to you so that you could be of service to God and to God's kingdom, and have the courage to let go when you are misusing creation and creation is not anymore leading you to God. Be simple. And everything moves in the horizon of gift. Lahat ng ito ay mula sa iyo. Muli kong handog sa iyo. Hindi naman akin eh. Galing naman sa iyo. So I could be free. I am not attached. I am not domineering. Because everything is gift. Just give me your love, and I have everything. Teach me to be generous. Pope Francis, you are the son of Ignatius through and through. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you very much. That's gratitude. And you can rest. He's going to be part of the open forum later on. So thank you very much, Your Eminence. In order to bring about a fuller and more in-depth discussion, we have invited 4 panelists representing different sectors addressed in the Encyclical to give their brief reactions. Gemma Teresa T. Narisma is Associate Professor of Physics at the Ateneo de Manila University. She is the Associate Director for Research at the Manila Observatory and heads its Regional Climate Systems Program. At the observatory, her teams use different climate models to better understand climate change in the ASEAN region. The results are then downscaled to further assess the potential impacts of climate change on our country, the Philippines. In recognition of her work at the observatory, the Philippine National Academy of Science and Technology named her Outstanding Young Scientist, OYS, in 2012. In 2013, she received the Outstanding Women in Nation Service Award for Atmospheric Science. She obtained her PhD in Atmospheric Science from the, I hope I pronounced it correctly, Macquarie University, tama ba? In Australia, and her MS in Environmental Science in BS in Applied Physics from the University of the Philippines in Diliman. So are you okay there? You can rest? Okay. Can I call on Gemma?
Good morning. I would like to start very briefly with how Pope Francis captured succinctly and right on the mark the issue of climate change in just a few paragraphs. Next slide, please. I won't even try to explain that, but that's just to show how good he was in sketching the points covering the science of climate change and why there is global warming and the potential consequences. It is actually quite impressive coming from a science point of view. He even tackled potential feedback mechanisms and so on. Next slide, please. He wraps this section on science evidence by saying that, quote, "If present trend continues, this century may well witness extraordinary climate change and unprecedented destruction of ecosystems with serious consequences for all of us." And that is true. We are possibly looking at a world that will be warmer by 4.8 degrees Celsius, Currently, we are warmer by 0.8 degrees Celsius only, and we are seeing impacts that we haven't seen before. The equivalent description to Pope Francis of that future world by scientists, climate scientists, is that the impacts would be severe, pervasive, and irreversible. Allow me to offer you some thoughts on how the Encyclical can make us scientists rethink the way we approach climate science, or perhaps science in general, with these 3 points. Next slide, please. Love and science, being uncertain, encounters, connecting, and engaging. As Cardinal Tagle said earlier, science at its best can make us listen to the cry of the earth. But we should also be challenged by this encyclical to rethink how we are doing things and how we will continue to do science. Love and science. Next slide, please. I was personally struck when Pope Francis wrote, "Our lack of response to these tragedies involving our brothers and sisters points to the loss of that sense of responsibility for our fellow men and women upon which all civil society is founded." End of quote. Scientists are often perceived as clinical, detached, and we actually thrive, I think, in that persona. One of the reasons that I went into science was because it is straightforward, factual, and I did not have to interact with people or make appearances to a large crowd of people. And many of us are really that is our comfort zone. But now we should be challenged. We are challenged. We are challenged to feel. We are challenged to put heart into our science, to care, to love, to not be clinical, to not be detached. Pope Francis wrote, "Our goal is not to amass information or to satisfy curiosity, but rather to become painfully aware, to dare to turn what is happening to the world into our own personal suffering, and thus to discover what each of us can do about it." It is actually painful to be a climate scientist right now, because you know what can potentially happen in the future. How do we respond? By doing science that has heart, that can only come from our faith and our sense of responsibility to our fellow men and women and to creation. The encyclical has noted the difference between nature versus creation, that while nature can be seen as a system that we study and try to understand, creation, on the other hand, Pope Francis writes, is of the order of love. Physical science, natural science, or do we do science that is not clinical and detached, that can often fuel our own thirst to seek our own personal glory, but rather, should we do science to respond to the pain that our human actions have caused on creation and on people? Should we rethink our questions and ask, why are we asking these questions in the first place? And do these questions in the end lead to or can help in moving towards, as Pope Francis said, authentic human development, one that has moral character and one that leads to an improvement in the quality of life of all people? Lately, I often begin talking about climate change by showing a photo of children and asking, what kind of risk will future generations face? I had to smile when I read that bit that Pope Francis wrote on a question that sort of reminds us on the research directions that we are thinking of in terms of our goals in our climate group. Pope Francis writes, "What is the purpose of our life in this world? Why are we here? What is the goal of our work and all our efforts? What need does the earth have of us?" It is no longer enough then simply to state that we should be concerned for future generations. We also need to see that what is at stake is our dignity. Yes, science will always need to be objective, impartial, unbiased, but it can be driven by love and passion for creation and finding one's own meaning. Being uncertain. Next slide, please. Pope Francis writes, "As often occurs in periods of deep crisis which require bold decisions, we are tempted to think that what is happening is not entirely clear." Oh, that's our scapegoat. In projecting future climate changes, we scientists have to make sure that we explain the uncertainties, to explain that we are not looking at a deterministic system with only one outcome. We say that there are different outcomes. There is a range of possible futures. We can get more certain. We are getting more certain a bit, But how certain does science need to be before we decide to take action? Do we continue to look for evidence that would make us very, very certain when the suffering is already present? These uncertainties can paralyze us, intentionally or unintentionally. And this is true not just for decision makers, but in all honesty, for us scientists as well, who analyze and produce the data. We hesitate because there are uncertainties, because we have to be responsible for that data information that we give, because we know that science can provide a fundamental foundation for moving forward, and we would like to make sure that that data is good. I myself am guilty of doing science to death, as we would say it, to be very sure with our results. But science needs to be fast if you are to respond to the urgent challenges we are now facing. We scientists then have to confront the difficult problem of finding the right balance between dealing with uncertainties and yet responding to the urgent need for answers that science can provide. We have to be transparent with our uncertainties, but at the same time find ways to work with those uncertainties. We have to balance good quality science with urgency and need, and that's not an easy task. Lastly, encounters, engaging, and humility in science. Climate scientists may have some of the answers to questions about global warming, how hot it is going to be, whether the rainfall is going to be intense, but we do not have the solutions. For true solutions can only come when there is engagement with different stakeholders and sectors and disciplines. We need an approach that is integrated and holistic. Pope Francis writes that dialogue among the various sciences is likewise needed, since each can tend to become enclosed in its own language, while specialization leads to a certain isolation and absolutization of its own field of knowledge. This prevents us from confronting environmental problems effectively. End of quote. Interdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity. But there is a relatively new word now that is gaining better traction: transdisciplinarity. This involves different disciplines and especially stakeholders at the very beginning of discussions. Stakeholders are part of defining the problem and critically important of the creation and finding of solutions. A few years ago, we had a project in this municipality in Albay where the mayor would sit through our whole day workshops. There I was telling them about how climate will change, how precipitation will change, and so on. And then the mayor asked, Doc, they always call me Doctora. Doctora, in 2004, we had a black bug incident that destroyed many of our crops and severely affected our livelihood. What were the conditions then? And would this happen again in the future? How could we prepare for it? And with all my data and figures, I could not answer his question. I could only say, sige po, Mayor, I will check and get back to you. Such questions can only come with constant engagement and connection. Such questions that should come from the people who need the information. These are the questions that matter. It is important for scientists to get questions that are from the ground and to not always seek or prescribe answers from the top. And it is only through embedded engagements that we can get these questions. Pope Francis writes this on technology: the idea of promoting a different cultural paradigm and employing technology as a mere instrument nowadays is inconceivable. Is this also true for science? Are our questions and science answers prescriptive? Transdisciplinary research is not easy. Transdisciplinary research requires humility in science. Scientists needs to be humble. Sometimes we're not. I think often we're not. There is a certain kind of arrogance in being a scientist. Magaling, no? Alam ko to. We think we know the answers, but we actually know only some. And we know a tiny bit of fraction of this incredibly complex climate system. But whatever little we know, we should put to very good use. And whatever little we know should be enriched by our encounters and engagements with society, with people. We need humility in science, which should lead to mutual respect and consideration that will allow us to work and find solutions together. My last slide. Oh, okay. Sorry, that's the slide for the encounters. Next slide, please. This year, we celebrate the 150th anniversary of the Manila Observatory, as you heard. Allow me to end then with this quote from Father Horacio de la Costa in his closing remarks on the 100th anniversary celebration of MO. He said, quote, "Even a complete layman in science like myself can at least appreciate what the Manila Observatory is, quite apart from what it does. He can appreciate the fact that this is an institution in which science is used not to destroy, but to save, in which research is inspired and guided by that blessed of Christian ideals, universal clarity, the service of mankind, all mankind, irrespective of color, race, or creed. They have taken for their motto, Lumen de Lumine, light from light, because it is their faith, serene and imperturbable, that all the paths of knowledge, wherever they may wind, lead in the end to that love that draws all man, all creation to itself." End of quote. I pray that we will have the heart and inspiration, faith and courage to continue this tradition of science rooted in love, undaunted by the uncertainties that we face, and with the goal of providing excellent science that is timely and responsive to current challenges and grounded in humility and encounters with those who are truly in need. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Narisma. Now we will call on our next panelist, Country Chairman of the Shell Companies of the Philippines, Mr. Edgar O. Chua, also Chairman of the Philippine Business for the Environment and the Energy Council of the Philippines and the President of Pilipina Shell Foundation. He's on the board of many civic organizations, recipient of numerous awards, including the MAP of the Year and the CEO of the Year in the Asia Pacific SABRE, Superior Achievement in Branding Reputation and Engagement. He earned his Bachelor of Science, Chemical Engineering, not from this school, from De La Salle University, and attended international seminars and courses, including the senior management courses in France. Under his leadership, Shell has become a key partner of the Manila Observatory, supporting the installation of automated weather station networks in Davao, Iloilo, and Cagayan de Oro, and establishing of a high-performance computing facility in the MO's Regional Climate Systems Program and its calibration laboratory. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ed Chu.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone, distinguished guests, especially to Cardinal Tagle, who was, I'm very proud to say, was my classmate. But need to clarify, not in the seminary, but in elementary and high school. Anyway, when I was invited to this forum, I said, well, I've heard of Laudato Si, but I need to maybe read it. But when I saw the material, it was quite daunting. It was a very thick document. But I actually found many important elements there which are very relevant to also what we're doing in the private sector, especially in Shell. The Pope mentions global warming, the need for water, interdependence. And today I'll try to present these elements which I think can be connected to the Pope's Encyclical. First slide, please. We will be facing a very challenging future because as the world becomes more prosperous and the population grows, there will be a significant demand on various resources. And we have identified what we call a stress nexus of water, food, and energy. And all these are interconnected. You need water to produce energy, you need energy to produce water, and you need both of these to produce food. And this is the stress and the need for all of this is going to grow as the world economy grows and as the population grows. Next slide. Now, this is a paradox of prosperity. On the top slide is a picture of a city. I think it's a city in Tokyo, which is quite clean, while at the bottom is a picture of Beijing on a typical day. Next slide. This is a picture of New Delhi in India, where pollution is quite serious, and you see lots of people and wearing masks or make do masks. Next slide. And this one is very familiar to all of us, typical of Manila, although this is not Manila. But sometimes people say this is a sign of prosperity. Next slide. This slide and the next slide I will show actually comes from the Climate Change Commission headed by Secretary Lucille Serene. And this identifies sectors of the economy which are major contributors to CO2 emissions. And you will see here that agriculture, energy, transport, waste are major contributors. Next slide. They did the modeling which showed, without looking at the numbers, but by looking at the future, 2030, this is the amount of greenhouse gas emissions on a business as usual scenario. And I hear people say sometimes that, well, but the Philippines in the global scheme of things is a very small contributor to emissions, so we shouldn't really be worried too much about this. We're very small. We have a very high level of renewables in our energy mix. But again, being interdependent, we all need to do our own contribution to actually addressing this challenge which is facing the whole world. Next slide. Now, the private sector, especially industry, and I speak for Shell, are actually not, they're not brushing this off. In Shell, we believe that climate change is a real problem. And there is no debate. There's some people who still debate whether is it real or is not real. But in Shell, we say this is a problem. And as such, Shell has been taking actions focusing on more efficient operations. We actually do greenhouse gas accounting. And this is important because, as they say, what you cannot measure, you cannot manage. So it's very important that you measure your greenhouse gas emissions. And this is part of an annual sustainability report. The products that we come up with also, we are looking at products that are addressing this. We are a major contributor to this challenge. And so it is incumbent upon us to come out with products which will be reducing the impact on the environment. Biofuels is important to us, but biofuels which we say is produced responsibly. I think a few days ago, the Pope lamented the production of soy in his native country of Argentina, but it's at the expense of the forest cover. And for us, biofuels, we actually come up with very strict requirements that it must not come from plantations which came about because of forest land being cleared. So there are very, very strict requirements for us before we can actually certify that the biofuel is something that we can use and sell. LNG, we believe, is the cleanest hydrocarbon, so it's important that we develop this. And the last point is the most important point, and this is about interdependence. We have to work with others. No company, no government, no single entity is big enough to address the challenges that we are all facing. So working with others is very, very important. Next slide. Now, I'll just give you an example of what we're doing to change our operations. This is our retail station in Nuvali in Santa Rosa. And what we have put in there we have now a water catchment which collects water from the roofs. Instead of going to the sewerage, it goes to a catchment area. And we use that water for watering the plants and for cleaning the station. Because when you think about it, the water we get from the tap, which is fit for drinking, is simply used for cleaning and for watering the plants. It doesn't have to be that way, so you can reduce your usage of water. We also have LED and solar panels installed in the station, and even the paint that we use there is a local paint, which is supposed to actually absorb nitrous oxides and other harmful gases. Next slide. Now, the need for collaborative action is very, very important. And here we say government alone are unlikely to be able to manage the shift to a sustainable energy system. So this has to really be a collaboration with various parties. And that's why I'm here today. And this is, again, to give you an example, the next slide, of a collaboration which we've been using. When Tony and Gemma presented to us what Manila Observatory is doing and what it needs, we were actually, we became very interested. Because one of the projects they have is the AWS network. And we saw a lot of benefits because this does not only look at short term, which is to warn local governments or local communities of impending weather disturbance, which can be serious, but this also looks at long-term patterns of climate change. So we saw that this one has a short, medium, and long-term objective. And so we immediately signed up with the Manila Observatory and agreed to put up around 53 AWS. And this is an example where we're collaborating with academe. We're also in partnership with the telecom company, Smart, for them to provide the communications to relay the information collected. What we provide are the sites. So it's either our gasoline stations, which are secure sites, or our depots or fuel facilities, so that the equipment, we're sure will be protected. And then local governments, we reach out to local governments so that they're aware, and second, that they know how to use the information that will be coming from this after Manila Observatory has processed the information. So next slide. So these are examples of the installations we have put in Davao and Iloilo. The idea is to put it in coastal cities because they are the ones most vulnerable to severe weather disturbances. And I think this is an example of what the Pope said, which is science at its best, where science is actually being used to harness the environment and protect the environment, most especially protect the most vulnerable, which are actually the poor. Normally, they're the ones living in the coastal areas because that's where they get their living. So with that, I'd like to thank you, these examples that I gave, and just to show you what the private sector is doing for its part in addressing the challenges facing society. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ed. Take your seat. Our next speaker is Ana Marie Karaos, is the Associate Director of the John J. Carroll Institute on Church and Social Issues. This is a Jesuit social center specializing in research-based advocacy on issues affecting poor and marginalized sectors of Philippine society. She heads the Urban Poverty and Governance Program of the Institute. Jing is former chair of Code NGO and sits on the boards of various NGOs, among them the Partnership of Philippine Support Service Agencies, Peace and Equity Foundation, Foundation for the Development of the Urban Poor, Philippine Council for Population and Development, and Freedom to Build. Jing holds a doctorate in sociology from the New School for Social Research in New York. She obtained an MPhil in Economics and Politics Development from Cambridge University and BS Management Engineering from here. Dr. Karaos will now share her insights.
Thank you, Tina, and good morning. In the 10 minutes that I hopefully have your attention, I wish to focus on the part of the Encyclical where the Pope talks about cities, and I will share my reflections on this. And I have given it the title, Home in the City. Following the method of reflection of see, judge, and act, I present how the Pope sees life in cities today and what we can do about it. Then, first I show how the Pope describes the state of our cities. Then I present his thoughts on what this condition is doing to people. And finally, how can we respond? There are three main ideas there, two of which come from Pope Francis himself, and the last is my own contribution by way of an actual example of a new approach in housing that is happening in Metro Manila. I will be quoting extensively from the Encyclical because the language is clear and concise there. At the most visible level, the Pope describes the state of our cities in this way. I will mention just the keywords, and you can read on the screen the complete quotation. Nowadays, we see disproportionate and unruly growth of cities, unhealthy to live in, pollution, urban chaos, poor transportation, noise, huge inefficient structures, wasteful of energy and water, neighborhoods that are congested, chaotic, and lacking in sufficient space, green space. As you will notice, this is very much a description of Metro Manila, and certainly of many other cities, especially the biggest ones. The environment as our common home encompasses more than the natural environment. It includes the built environment, the world as built by humans. After describing the physical external environment, the Pope invites us to make a deeper reflection on what the external environment is doing